tremendous majority. That was what the regular nominees said. It was a withering rebuke to treason, in the opinion of this gentleman. It was a good joke, anyway, with the Democratic managers who had taken Colville up, being all in the Republican family. Whichever it was a mortification for Colville which his pride could not brook. He stood disgraced before the community, not only as a theorist and unpractical doctrinaire, but as a dangerous man, and what was worse, he could not wholly acquit himself of a measure of bad faith. His conscience troubled him even more than his pride. Money was found, and a printer bought up with it to start a paper in opposition to the Democrat-Republican. Then Colville contemptuously offered to sell out to the Republican committee in charge of the new enterprise, and they accepted his terms. In private life he found much of the old kindness returning to him, and his successful opponent took the first opportunity of heaping coals of fire on his head in the public street, when he appeared to the outer eye to be shaking hands with Colville. During the months that he remained to close up his affairs after the sale of his paper, the Post-Democrat-Republican, the newspaper had agglutinated the titles of two of its predecessors after the fashion of American journals, was fulsome in its complimentary allusions to him. It politely invented the fiction that he was going to Europe for his health, impaired by his journalistic labors, and adventurously promised its readers that they might hope to hear from him from time to time in its columns. In some of its allusions to him, Colville detected the point of a fine irony, of which he had himself introduced the practice in the Democrat-Republican, and he experienced with a sense of personal impoverishment the curious fact that a journalist of strong characteristics leaves the tradition of himself in such degree with the journal he has created that he seems to bring very little away. He was obliged to confess in his own heart that the paper was as good as ever. The assistants who had trained themselves to write like him seemed to be writing quite as well, and his honesty would not permit him to receive the consolation offered him by the friends who told him that there was a great falling off in the Post-Democrat-Republican. Except that it was rather more stalwart in its republicanism, and had turned quite round on the question of the tariff, it was very much what it had always been. It kept the old decency of tone which he had given it, and it maintained the literary character which he was proud of. The new management must have divined that its popularity, with the women at least, was largely due to its careful selections of verse and fiction, its literary news, and its full and piquant criticisms, with their long extracts from new books. It was some time since he had personally looked after this department, and the young fellow in charge of it under him had remained with the paper. Its continued excellence, which he could not have denied if he had wished, seemed to leave him drained and feeble, and it was partly from the sense of this that he declined the overtures, well backed up with money, to establish an independent paper in Des Vaches. He felt that there was not fight enough in him for the work, even if he had not taken that strong disgust for public life which included the place and its people. He wanted to get away, to get far away, and with the abrupt and total change in his humor, he reverted to a period in his life when journalism and politics and the ambition of Congress were things undreamed of. At that period he was a very young architect, with an inclination toward the literary side of his profession, which made it seem profitable to linger, with his Ruskin in his hand, among the masterpieces of Italian Gothic, when perhaps he might have been better employed in designing red-roofed, many-veranded, consciously mullioned seaside cottages on the New England coast. He wrote a magazine paper on the zoology of the Lombardic pillars in Verona, very Ruskinian, very scornful of modern motive.